Good evening, everyone. My name is Jack Harkins. I am president of our local chapter of the Piscataway Elks, lodge number 2414. I'd like to thank all the officers and members and guests for attending this evening's remembrance ceremony. And please recite with me the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a prayer by our lodge chaplain, Katie Santora.
Almighty God, the day of September 11th, 2001, will indelibly inscribed in our memories. We looked with horror on the terrorist attacks of 9/11, but we looked with honor on acts of courage by ordinary people who sacrificed themselves to prevent further death and destruction. We shed our tears in a common bond of grief for those we loved and lost. We journeyed through a dark valley, but your light has led us to a place of hope. You have turned our grief into determination. We are resolved to do what is good and right and just. Help us to remember what it means to be Americans, a people endowed with abundant blessings. Help us to cherish the freedoms we enjoy and inspire us to stand with courage, united as one nation in the midst of any adversity. Lord, hear this prayer for our nation. Amen.
You may please be seated. May the lives remembered, the deeds recognized, and the spirit reawakened be eternal beacons which reaffirm respect for life, strengthen our resolve to preserve freedom, and inspire an end to hatred, ignorance, and intolerance. These words are part of the mission statement at the National September 11th Memorial and Museum at the World Trade Center in New York City. As we know, freedom is the cornerstone of the American way of life, and on September 11, 2001, our lives were changed forever. Today we acknowledge the 18-year anniversary of the day we witnessed the purposeful, large-scale destruction of innocent and defenseless lives on American soil. Just as December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor Day defined a generation, September 11th helped shape who we are and what we believe in. It reminded us of how fragile our freedom can be, but the day holds countless stories of survival, courage, and heroism, which also revealed the strength of freedom. We pay tribute by honoring those who lost their freedom on 9/11 and those brave warriors who have made that ultimate sacrifice by defending our freedom since that date. Thousands lost their lives when two planes crashed into the World Trade Center, another into the Pentagon, and a fourth plane headed towards Washington, D.C., which fell in a Pennsylvania field. When the towers fell, 749 New Jersey residents, 3 from Piscataway, lost their lives. We felt shock, disbelief, and anguish, and as a country, we mourned and searched for answers. But more importantly, we gathered the strength to move forward. On December 18, 2001, President George W. Bush signed Joint Resolution 71, presented by the U.S. House of Representatives, designating September 11th of each year as Patriot Day. On this day, the President directs that the American flag be flown at half-staff and for a moment of silence beginning at 8:46 Eastern Daylight Time, commemorating the time the first plane crashed on September 11, 2001. This evening, we gather to remember the people we lost on that day. We have all heard or seen the phrase, "America will never forget." And now, 18 years later, we gather again to hold true to that claim.
As we and the rest of the country mark the 18th anniversary of this event, many of you have already revisited the emotions you felt in the moments that followed the terrorist attacks. On that clear, sky blue morning of 9/11, our focus began as we watched with horror the tragedy unfolding on our television screen as the Twin Towers were engulfed in flames and slowly collapsed. As we understood the enormity of what we were witnessing, think about the courage of our policemen and firefighters who rushed into two burning towers to get thousands to safety. Little did we know that only a short time later, more tragedy would befall us as a plane crashed into a section of the Pentagon and more lives were senselessly lost. I would like to read a short poem entitled Why from an unknown author while member Rich Racine, Assemblyman Joseph Danielson, Piscataway Police Chief Michael McLaughlin, and members of the River Road Fire Company light a candle remembering those who lost their lives at the Twin Towers and at the Pentagon. This poem that I'm about to read has now been inscribed onto the tablet behind me here and has become part of our newly designed monument. Why? Grief and sorrow struck this nation in an unexplainable way, leaving us surrounded by tears and sorrow, and only one thing left to say. Why? Why did this have to happen? What did we do so wrong? Why did you have to take our loved ones? How do we replace those who are gone? But we will not go quietly. We will stand up and fight. United, we will stand together for what is true, what is right. Heroes rose out of the ashes to save a life we thought was lost, never thinking what might happen, never caring what the cost. They didn't do it for the glory. They didn't do it for the fame. They only did what they knew was right. They are our heroes without a name. United, we can build a better tomorrow. Let us finish what they began. To start, let us say a prayer for them together and keep them close in our heart.
As we all know, the next plane attack, a flight originally scheduled to land in San Francisco, was hijacked in midair and was headed towards the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Getting information via cell phone and with realization of terrorist plan underway, 40 courageous passengers and crew of Flight 93 took matters into their own hands. As they stormed the cabin of the plane to save lives of perhaps hundreds of innocent people as their plane went down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. We have since come to recognize Todd Beamer's phrase, "Let's roll." While I read a poem entitled "Let's Roll," Lodge member Frank Contessa, who updated our monument when nature took its toll, will light a candle in their memory. They were on a flight going from here to there, just another day, each one without a care. Then they got the news about WTC, and then we realized the next one is we. Some of them were moved forward, the rest moved to the rear, and it's hard to imagine the helplessness and fear. But they must have got to talking and figured out their plight, that in this list of bombers, they were the next fight. Wonder what went through their minds, how much they were scared. But when they thought the USA, realized how much they cared. We think about our heroes, and then those on the front line. Then they all heard, "Let's roll." They knew that it was time to step up and sacrifice whatever it may take, and made the call most of us hoped to never have to make. They went down in victory, the first against the terrorist, showed the will of Americans is strong and still exists. They stood up for America, knew what they had to do, and let's not ever forget, they did it for me and you. Nobody will ever know what went on in that plane. We just know that it added to the misery and the pain. We all had enough on that September day, but they gave us more to pray for the same way. Another bunch of lost souls were lost on 9/11, but they aren't truly lost, for they have found their little niche in heaven.
In an effort to tie the three events of September 11th, 2000 together, the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and United's Flight 93, a 2-ton, 14-foot high cross made out of steel from the World Trade Center was transported on Saturday, August 23, 2008, from New York to the Shanksville, Pennsylvania Volunteer Fire Department as part of a monument in front of the firehouse to honor those who gave their lives on United's Flight 93. As hundreds of firefighters, policemen, and citizens throughout New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania proudly waved our country's flag and bowed their heads in prayer, the steel cross made a 311-mile journey accompanied by hundreds of motorcyclists and many of them current or retired New York firefighters. On September 10, 2011, the first part of the Flight 93 National Memorial, which is located at the site of the crash in Shanksville, was dedicated, and on September 10, 2015, the Visitor Center was opened. And as visitors to this site gather together this year, the Tower of Voices, a 93-foot tall musical instrument made of steel and concrete, holding 40 wind chimes, one dedicated to each of the 40 heroes that took back the plane after it was hijacked during the terrorist attacks, will peal forth. What was a common field one day is now a field of honor forever.
In New York City in 2011, at the site of the World Trade Center, the National September 11th Memorial opened. The memorial twin reflects pools are each nearly an acre in size and features the largest man-made waterfall in North America. The pool sits in the footprints where the Twin Tower once stood. The names of every person who died in 2001 attacks are inscribed into bronze panels edging the memorial pools, a powerful reminder of the largest loss of life resulting from a foreign attack on American soil. In 2014, the Memorial Museum opened at the site.
In 2006, Elk member Bob Martineau created a replica of the Twin Towers from the trunk of the fallen tree in front of our lodge. Sadly, weather has taken its toll on our monument, and these towers have succumbed to nature. Last year, member Frank and Tessa constructed a stronger, more durable monument so that we can continue to hold near and dear the memories of the lost lives on this day in 2001. This year, Corey Pine, a member of Boy Scout Troop 67, inquired about a project to be completed at our lodge in order to earn his Eagle Scout badge. With his insightful planning and the help from fellow troop leaders and members, family and friends, you now see before you a truly impressive memorial garden. Due to his college schedule, Corey isn't able to attend this evening's ceremony, but we would like to acknowledge his outstanding commitment and dedication to the project. I would like to ask Doug Pine and Tim Simmons to please light a candle in Corey's absence. All these monuments stand to remind us and future generations of the events of September 11th, 2001, and to honor the mothers and fathers and sons and daughters, the neighbors and friends that lost their lives on that fateful day. I'd like to ask everyone to please rise. Our fallen heroes' lives were not in vain. We will remember the hundreds of uniformed personnel and civilians who sacrificed their lives by running into the towers, the heroes who remained in the towers to help others escape, the brave passengers and crew of United Flight 93, and we'll remember the 184 unsuspecting victims in the Pentagon. We would also like to take time to remember the survivors of 9/11. They are special people who have gone through pain and suffering, difficult losses, and life-altering experiences. We cannot begin to comprehend the emotions they have endured. We have the utmost respect for them, and they remain in our thoughts and our prayers. Since the horrific events that unfolded on that fateful day, tens of thousands of U.S. troops have been injured or have given the ultimate sacrifice in the war against terrorism or in the continued fight for freedom. A few of our veterans, Billy Kleeman, Harry Newton, Dan Bernstein, will light the final candle in their honor or memory as we stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I would like to ask everyone to please be seated for a musical interlude as we take a moment to reflect on and remember all those we have lost. During this time, please feel free to come up and light a candle in memory of someone that you might have lost. We have lit the candles of remembrance to remember your loved one, your neighbor, or your friend. At this time, I would like to thank Boy Scout Troop number 67 and the River Road Fire Company for once again participating in this evening's ceremony. This concludes our ceremony, but I would like to introduce a few people. First, we have with us Elk's District Deputy, Central District, Jim Copcho. We also have with us Mayor Brian Waller. Sure.
Thank you and good evening. First of all, I want to thank the Elks for hosting this event today, as well as the participation from the River Road Fire Company members and obviously Troop 67. I want to acknowledge some of the folks that are here, officials. We have Councilwoman at Large Chanel McCollum. We have Councilwoman Gabrielle Cahill, Councilman Kapil Shaw. We have Council President Frank Earn, and we have our County Sheriff Millie Scott in the back. We have Jim Ballard, our councilman from the 2nd Ward, and we have our Chief of Police Mike McLaughlin and Captain Butch Morrison, and we also have one of our other police officers here, Calvin Laughlin from the department. And I want to thank everybody for coming out here with this remembrance 18 years after the horrific event. In today's newspaper, there was a very good article about what happened that day, given the fact that the tragedy that involved our country. But through this tragedy, there was friendships born. So I know everybody knows when the airspace was closed, a lot of those planes were diverted to, if they were coming over from Europe, they was diverted to Newfoundland, Gander, Newfoundland. And how a lot of those people ended up in Gander, Newfoundland, sheltered a lot of Americans over there until the airspace could get back open. And friendships that were born from a tragedy that hit our country has still endured because of that. So despite the tragedy and the horrific event that happened, maybe something good did come out of it, that hopefully people understand each other a little bit better on what's going on. It's never going to substitute for the loss of life that many folks suffered in this country, especially in the tri-state region. But if we get to know a little of each other, maybe something like this will never happen again, and that people would not suffer from that. So without further ado, do you mind if I introduce our State Assemblyman Joe Daniels? And I do believe he has a couple proclamations he has to reduce. Come on, Assemblyman. I'm going to give you the mic.
Good evening, Piscataway Elks. I was sitting here thinking about the tragedy of 9/11, and it got me thinking about my childhood. When I was very young, I remember sitting at the table with a lot of us. I grew up the youngest of 9 children, and I could remember conversations with my grandfather, or listening to conversations. I wasn't invited into those conversations, but my grandfather, his brother, my 2 uncles, and my father and his best friend, they were all Army veterans of World War II. And they would constantly tell stories. And, all their grandparents came from different countries and had different religions. And it was a remarkable group of men at that table. And I looked up to them. But what I walked away from, and along with my brothers and sisters, was the underlying story of all their stories was an obligation that they woke up with. It wasn't about giving back to the country. It was an obligation to contribute to the country, the state, their community, their family, and their church. It was a sense of accepting everybody and loving their neighbors and their family and their friends, and also teaching people what they did, why they did it. They had a moral code, and it was always true north. They had Pearl Harbor. We have 9/11, but those were certainly not the first tragedies, and they're not going to be the last tragedies. So I believe that if you conduct yourself in a way that is true north morally, and you let people know what you're doing, you teach your children, loving your neighbor, accepting your neighbor, we're going to be okay. And when we see our Maker, he'll agree, or she'll agree, however you should see it. I would like to thank the Elks. You've partnered with me every year since I've been in office with the backpack drive. It's still surprising to me that our children in our public schools don't have enough supplies or the right supplies, and we have to supplement that. I'm happy for the opportunity. I'm absolutely joyous that I could partner with an organization like the Elks. Even though we put together every year around 800 backpacks with my staff, I have Laura here, Fred, and Pam. 800, we still are missing children. But we did the right thing. So I would like to present a resolution to the members of the Elks that helped us out. I'm going to read this very quickly. Whereas the General Assembly of the State of New Jersey is pleased to salute the Piscataway Elks Lodge 2414, highly esteemed in the Garden State, in grateful recognition of the remarkable service and dedication exhibited by each of its members during Assemblyman Danielson's annual backpack and school supplies drive. Whereas particularly lauded amongst its ranks are Jan Schmidt, who lends her wisdom and expertise as the Youth Activities Chairperson and organizes the purchases of supplies, and a team of extraordinary individuals who assist her, including Marie Kleeman, Julie Brokaw, Alyssa Wojtowsik, Valerie Johnson, Jesse Schmidt, and Maureen Chapman. And whereas it is altogether proper and fitting for this House to pause in its deliberations to acknowledge Piscataway Elks Lodge number 2414 as an entity worthy of praise and emulation. Now, therefore, be resolved that this House hereby commends the Piscataway Elks 2414. Thank you very much.
And I believe, did we introduce the police chief? We did. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, thank you very much, Assemblyman. That I don't want to overtake the 9/11 ceremony, but that what we do with that with those backpacks and everybody who does that work is just a sample of the work that we do as Americans. And I would like to thank you all for coming. And it's time to go inside and enjoy some of our American hospitality, hot dogs. Thank you very much for coming.